Hi, Issue Space community. This is Kat Addo, the creator of the space. Stay tuned at the end of this episode to hear about 2 Issue Space partners that I think you're going to love. Hello there, and welcome to Issue Space. We are a podcast and community for everyone who's working to save the world. I'm Kat Addo. I'm a social impact strategist and the creator of Issue Space. And if your work involves trying to make the world safer, fairer, more equitable, more inclusive, sustainable, you will find community here in Issue Space. You can learn more about us at issuespacemedia.com. I hope you enjoy and welcome to the space. This episode of the Issue Space podcast is called Who's Working in Impact? Snapshot of a Shaken Social Sector. Now, I have to say, I love like an obnoxiously dramatic podcast title. Every title is longer than the last. They're all at least 2 parts. There's a colon, there's 3 to 4 alliterations, and that's just like, that's what I bring to the space. But I actually think that this time I'm not exaggerating. I think it actually is that dramatic right now. I think everybody who, most immediately, if you're a citizen of the United States, but certainly there are ripple effects around the world, we are all adjusting to the new old administration, Donald Trump's second term as president, and just how drastic and pointed and hostile the energy has become to many of the priorities and ideals that you would find embodied in social impact work, whether it's for people or planet. And so, again, as people, that's jarring enough, but when you actually have your paycheck tied into this work and tied into these ideals and to a certain level of favorability or at least feasibility to work on these topics where you live and work, it throws a lot into question. And so I just want to explore, what are the jobs? What are the jobs? What are the career paths looking like? And here to have that conversation with us is Robert J. Ross, who I will always call Robbie, because that's just who you are to me. Robbie is the Chief Partnerships Officer of Cultivate, a professional development organization for social impact pros. They have a really cool job board called All Hands. They have a really good Slack community, like very down to earth. You can go in there, you can ask for an intro, you can invite people to things. It's really dope. And you do professional development, I believe, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, things like that. So just all things to help job seekers and organizations who are both purpose-driven kind of meet their ideal match and thrive. So, hi.
Hey, Kat.
Hey. You again.
First of all.
Oh, God.
Okay. For those who are listening to this recording, we are here in person now together.
We are.
And what a treat to be in community with each other. Am I right? I mean, we're how many years after the start of COVID? Yeah, we can clap. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's pretty extraordinary. And as someone myself who spends most of my time on Zoom, I began to discount and underappreciate what this can do. So thank you all for being part of it. And of course,
absolutely.
Thank you, Kat.
The effort of being someplace in person, like you almost can't even bother anymore.
Truly.
So, yeah.
So tired. All the time. It's really amazing. Speaking of which, hands up if you're jet lagged right now. Just me? No, there's 2. Great. We're in this together, okay?
Listen, look alive. Wake up, Buttercup. It's time to go. So, Robbie, you were on the first ever episode of the Issue Space podcast where we kind of talked about identity and folks working in social impact. Do we like over-identify with certain progressive archetypes that maybe limit our work? And then you came back to the space when we had our first live event in January, I think like 5 days before the inauguration. And it was just about kind of grounding and being in community and exploring like, what do we think we need to be prepared for? Now, in retrospect, that's a hilarious question because there's no way that any of us were adequately prepared for a single thing that's happened since. But, we kind of had this touch base and I asked you, what jobs are you seeing right now? And how can we kind of take that as an indicator of where the mind and the priority of the social impact sector is, or the social impact workforce? And at the time, so this was mid-January, you said that on the whole, you were seeing fewer social impact jobs than you usually would be posted, and that the jobs you did see were either about business development or really specialized issue area expertise, which I kind of take as like, okay, folks are kind of shoring up their resources and trying to get people who can help them do that, and they're trying to safeguard knowledge and expertise in their field. Now, 4 months later, with everything that's happened, we have lost federal agencies. We have had huge teams, public and private, decimated, whose work relates to supporting human beings, social services, diversity, equity, inclusion, all of that. Now, what does that snapshot look like?
Yeah, 4 months. Really? That's all it's been?
It's wild.
It's pretty amazing. Let's just collective deep breath. Yeah. Okay. And at some point, exhale. That was more for me. Yeah. So thank you very much for that introduction, Kat. And to put a finer point on it in terms of my job, so I work at a small people operations firm for the social impact sector. It's called Cultivate. Cultivate does a host of different things. Sometimes we do recruitment or outplacement services for people who are being laid off or otherwise impacted by restructures. Sometimes we do one-on-one executive coaching or cohort-based management training. And so in this conversation, I hope to bring all that to bear across each of those different communities to see what's it look like ecosystem-wide right now. And it's going to have to be a real talk conversation because it's not great, at least not yet. But we're going to end on notes of optimism. Okay.
Robbie, what are the jobs?
Okay, so what's going on out there? So Kat called back to this conversation in January where I had noted that, so All Hands is our talent matchmaking platform. It's existed since 2020. And over the course of the years since, we've brokered new relationships and new partnerships with employers around the mission-driven sector. Right now, we've had over 300 organizations that we've engaged with. Part of why I'm sharing that is because each of those organizations connect to our jobs board via their careers page in an automated way. So our jobs board has this, what should be hopefully accurate snapshot of at least a corner of this space, okay? It's not every organization, of course it's not, but in particular, the US social impact space, we've got a sort of barometer against that. And in January, I had mentioned that at our peak, which was sustained for several months, if not years, we used to see around 2,200 or so jobs at any given moment. And in January, when we came together, we had closer to 800 jobs, okay?
Isn't that nuts?
800 jobs. Now today, this being recorded in May, we have just under 600, okay? Now, I promise we're going to come back from the edge here together, okay? But I want to be real with you all about what we're seeing in terms of dynamics out there. There are fewer jobs right now than historically we've seen, at least over the course of the last 5 years or so. In terms of what they are, there's a couple trends. So you're right to mention last time there was this idea of the fundraisers or development or major gifts folks. Maybe no surprise, organizations are trying to raise money right now because they're trying to fill a gap. That is still true. That has spiked. So anyone who's in the development profession, whether engaging with philanthropies and institutions or with high net worth individuals, there is a home for you in this movement, okay, for sure. Outside of that, a couple other trends include digital, for whatever reason. I don't actually know the reason behind this, but what we're seeing now is folks who bring expertise with social media, with email fundraising, and other types of digital strategy and digital organizing. There's a whole host of those coming up now. And finally, and importantly, we're seeing a lot of operations jobs. And by operations jobs, what I mean is everything from literally operations manager or equivalent up through deputy director or chief of staff. And part of what we're hearing on the executive coaching side of things is we believe this is indicative of organizations trying to do more with less, which is to say, if funding isn't where it needs to be, if layoffs are still on the horizon, we need people and increasingly more senior leading people within these organizations who are thinking about how do the different teams engage with one another as the strategy itself for these organizations is shifting in an incredibly uncertain and complex landscape externally right now. So folks who are familiar with infrastructure building in particular, I'd say that's becoming more and more in demand across the sector.
So that was all fascinating, but all my brain can focus on is 600 jobs. 600 jobs for the lot of us. That's crazy. I mean, it's weird. Like, it is affirming on the one hand, but also just anecdotally as a job seeker, I actually feel like I see a lot of social impact jobs. I don't know if we're starting to like muddy the language, so maybe things sound mission driven. We all kind of know. Like when people start talking a certain way, it's like, you know, when people put on like a black accent and you're like, that's adorable. But you know, I don't feel, my hypothesis coming in was that you were going to say there's a ton of jobs because I feel like I see a lot of jobs, but there's just more seekers. I thought that's what the proportion would be. But I'm assuming more seekers? Because I'm feeling like if you were let go from an organization like USAID, you're not going to go quietly into like, I mean, what would you do? Like, you're not going to go like work at a major bank. Maybe, I don't know. But I think like if you've gotten this far making a commitment to mission-oriented, purpose-oriented work, you're not going to walk away from that easily. So I'm thinking like, it's just, there's too many of us that's overwhelming the amount of jobs, but you're actually literally telling me there aren't any jobs. So I don't know. It's on you to kind of bring the vibe back.
Catherine,
I didn't put this out
there. Are not no jobs, okay? Also, we're recording this in the offices of Idealist, okay? Big fan. Found my first job on Idealist. How many people found a job on Idealist in the room here? Show of hands.
Wow,
yeah, we've got a solid, that's like 40% or so. Yeah. Introduce me to the world of nonprofits.
I know.
Love it.
There are resources.
There are resources.
What do you, and maybe it would be more on the job seeker side, like people opening up to you. What's the effect of Washington? Is it like what I'm presuming of like, okay, we're going to stay in, social impact work, but we're going to try to find other homes for it? Do you feel the impact? Because another thing that I was wondering was if the coincidence of all of that upheaval and the remote work era was making it harder for folks to find jobs. So if I live and work in New York City, we're recording this in New York City, you could be applying to a New York-based team against somebody as qualified, more qualified, different skill set, whatever, from kind of anywhere now, depending on how rigorous they are with their return to work or their hybrid work policies. But do you feel the effect of what's happened with the federal agencies in Washington in particular on this season of the job search?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we've talked about the job side of the demand supply, let's talk about the job seeker side. So again, turning to the audience here in the room right now, if you yourself personally, and if you feel comfortable sharing this, were impacted by a restructure over the course of the, say, last 2 years, go ahead and raise your hand if you're comfortable with it. Okay, now raise your hand, and those can keep their hands raised. Raise your hand if you know someone close to you who was impacted by a restructure over the course of the last 2 years. It's almost everyone in this room. Almost everyone, okay?
Absolutely.
I think that's a fair sample size for this sort of data. We're seeing this a lot. So the shakeup at the federal level. Can we swear on this podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. You know what I want to say? I'm not going to say it. You can picture it, okay? I mean, what just complete garbage, but all right. So what we're seeing at the federal level is it's actually a couple of different ripple effects, and I'm going to go down again before coming back up. So just to be clear, it's the people who themselves were directly impacted. DOGE eliminated my position, and now I'm a public sector employee looking for what comes next. There's a second order, which is, you mentioned USAID. When funding is cut, so many organizations who are trying to do mission-driven work themselves then are also being impacted, and we're seeing those ripple effects. Unfortunately, there's a third as well. And this is to any philanthropists in the room or listening now, this is for you, my friends, okay? What we're seeing is a lot of the big institutional funders, the big foundations, this is kind of their moment. This is when we need them stepping up to the plate, okay? There's a big gap being left here, and we need private philanthropy, if ever, now. That, I'm going to generalize, that is not what we are seeing. But on the whole, what we're seeing is those funders spooked by the uncertainty of the market in such profound ways that they're actually holding their resources closer to their chests, which means that organizations that in theory aren't directly or even really indirectly connected to federal government funding are now themselves also being impacted by the dynamics at play. And that really sucks. And in fact, it's unnecessary. It should cause us to question the whole system and structure that's gotten us here and what it would look like, to diversify some of the different funding baskets that we've become totally beholden to, okay? That's really tricky. So with that said, the job market, we've also been hit by a lot of job seekers now. We're over 20,000 people who are in the all hands community. Now that's grown gradually over the years, but we're seeing it grow exponentially over the course of the last really year or so, and especially since the inauguration. The good news, I want to put some good news in here,
Please.
Okay, in terms of what we're seeing.
Make us feel better.
Okay, so first of all, to anyone who's on the hunt right now for what comes next, there is a normalization within the construct of hiring managers or recruiters of the idea of restructures, which is to say, if ever they were taboo or if someone was impacted by a restructure or laid off and became worried about how they were going to play it in a conversation that happened, well, I'm seeing that next to nil now. I mean, the assumption is, oh, you probably got laid off because this whole sector is going through stuff right now, you know? So I want you to feel that normalcy and that universal sense that it's okay to own that narrative and situate it within the context of what we're seeing ecosystem wide. That's thing one. Thing two is for people, this is like the best I can do at a little silver lining here. So just let's try it out. Yeah. For people who are at organizations that are feeling insecure about the future of their budgets right now, what we've been seeing over the course of the last really 2 years or so, but especially lately, is organizations and leaders within them that are facing possible budget cuts. They are being more intentional and deliberate than ever before about the way they ultimately pursue and roll out any sorts of restructures that come, okay? By that I mean, alongside things like severance, we're seeing more and more invest, and I mentioned we do outplacement services, the idea of hiring career coaches to work with people on their resumes, on their interview pitches, and try to help soften their landing wherever they can. Now, I really hope this sector needs to stay alive, okay? That's not the answer that I'm saying now, but I offer that because I think it's indicative of how leaders are really, truly, and I believe this kind of writ large, with some exceptions, of course, are really doing their best right now with circumstances that are incredibly difficult. And I hear behind the scenes how many of them are desperately trying to care for the well-being and welfare of the employees they're stewarding and shepherding. Yeah. I think that's really important for us to know, even if we don't have all the answers right now. There is this intentionality behind it that is giving me some hope.
I agree. It's a good reminder not to turn on each other because every decision is difficult. And just imagine the weight of how many livelihoods, you know, I've managed small teams and gotten ulcers worrying about what was going to happen to them if something happened to me, you know. Can I tell you something else I heard today, though? I don't know how much you work with C-suite level folks, but I heard a lot are looking for a way out. I think it's too much. And I know we actually know someone in common who was a C-suite level person who just was like, see ya. And like not to leave the space, but just to leave their circumstance because they needed to break out of the depressing stagnancy of trying to hold everything up and have something new and keep their spark, you know, so Absolutely. They could remain committed to this work. I don't know if you have heard anything or seen anything similar. Yeah,
people are tired.
Yeah.
People are tired for sure. And there were murmurs in the room of agreement, it sounded like, for the recording. It is hard out there right now. I think if there's any benefit to, like, why are we sitting here listening to two people with microphones telling you what you already know? Like, we know that it's hard out there. I think it's because actually the act of sitting with that fact in community can help any of us feel less stiflingly alone with what feels like it must be me.
I would agree with that.
It's not you. It is really not you. It's none of you in this room. It's no one listening to this. It's no one person right now. And if nothing else, and there's other things we could try to do and build together, but really leaning into that fact, this is ecosystem wide right now. And that means there's power in numbers once we all realize it isn't me. And actually, I've got some creativity and ingenuity I want to apply to trying to build what comes next.
Yeah. What about the whole turn on diversity, equity, and inclusion? So there is a very concerted effort to stigmatize, criminalize, defund, you know, deinstitutionalize any effort to, I'm pretty factual about this stuff, just to acknowledge that different kinds of human beings with different lived experiences and different ties to history exist. And workplaces and buy things. Like, this really doesn't even have to be deep if we don't want it to be. But it is deep for a lot of people to the point that they're trying to erase any mention of it and any of its efforts. I remember in the summer of 2020 when it was like all of a sudden every organization, for-profit, nonprofit, woke up and realized that like they hadn't spoken to a Black woman in like 7 years, and they all scrambled. And at one point I counted, I had a full-time job doing the same stuff I was doing before, and frankly, the same stuff I'm doing now. I was in 7 different conversations of organizations being like, you have to work here. We need you on our leadership team, because that was the upswing. That was the heyday of it being cynically fashionable, you know, more graciously a priority to diversify teams and leadership in a way that could favor someone like me. Now, what do you see? Are the roles disappearing? Are you getting requests for people with different kinds of lived experience? Or is there are no mention of lived experience, no mention of identity. I'm curious what that change in the culture looks like from your vantage point.
They just think we just gotta get rid of DEI and then the world is perfect, right? That's just the answer. Okay, collective eye roll. Here's what we're seeing. So from my vantage point, we don't work with big corporates who aren't mission driven in some way. And that's not to say none of you should do that. There's different arms and departments within these big players that are so important to getting change done. We don't work with those. The ones that we work with are usually small, progressive for-profits, if they're for-profits at all, or nonprofits or unions, et cetera. In terms of what we're seeing, we're going underground, my friends, okay? So what that looks like in practice is, okay, maybe even within the construct of some of these social impact jobs, employee engagement is coming in hot, okay? Human resources. And what I'm hearing behind closed doors from leaders is, if anything, we're doubling down on this shit. Are you kidding me? Of course we're gonna do this. And so for any professionals who aspire to be in the DEI sphere or already find yourselves there, you're good, okay? You're good within the construct of like, we need more jobs in general. That is true, but it's not going anywhere.
That's what I've heard as well. Okay, so what do you think? I'm going to start winding us down because we're just doing a
how are we doing on time?
Little kiki. I truly have no idea. So what skills do you think, so maybe more now like coaching hat, career coach, professional development, what skills, whether they're technical skills or sort of on the more personal side of professional development and leadership skills, do you think that social impact pros in particular need to be cultivating?
That's my firm's name, not mine. Sarah here? No, okay.
Right now. What's gonna make a social impact pro better prepared to meet this moment if they do a little bit of upskilling?
All right, I'm going to give you a soft side and then more hard side technical skill, okay? Soft side, I'm going to move through it quickly because it risks being generic, but I'm saying it because it's true. Resilience and the idea of the ability, however you can help me figure out a word to this, I'm sure there is one. The ability to pivot quickly and strategically.
Agility.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Her name is Kat Addo, everyone. Okay.
Let's go.
Agility. Okay. Those things, no robot's going to replace you. Okay. We need that more than ever right now. However, that robot I was just talking about, let's go technical side. And this may surprise you, but I hope I do. Here's the thing. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. Let's talk about AI. So I would say, what's the opposite?
I'm a bot.
I'm a full-blown automaton. Thank you for being here with me. Okay, plug me in. If there's early adopters, I'm like the end of the line.
Are you kidding me?
I'm like,
when I'm over my dead body, will I learn a new technical skill? Okay, keep going.
That's me. Okay. My partner, he happens to run an artificial intelligence initiative at a company right now.
I never knew what he did.
Me neither, honestly.
He seems very wealthy, though. We were on like the 99th floor, but go ahead.
You got to pick them intentionally, okay? So
household diversification. Hey, everybody needs a financial plan.
He is not here, okay? Love him to death. So the reason I'm saying this is because we can have a conversation, and we probably should, about putting more parameters and guardrails around these new forms of technology that are hitting the streets, okay? What is no longer an option, and I'm very serious about this, is putting our head into that sand and pretending that it's not happening. This train has left the station. And if anything, what we need is people driven by, I don't know, morals, conscience, to be in the game right now, thinking about and being able to understand enough about these dynamics that we can set up the systems around it. And so I offer that to say, I'm saying AI, but what I really mean is whatever is there on the edge of like cutting edge of the way the world is changing, that's not only useful because there are mechanisms to help us do our jobs better through it, but the whole marketplace is changing. The whole world will be changing very soon. He like whispers this to me as we fall asleep every night. He's like,
oh God, what a nightmare.
It's great. Love it to death. Yeah, we whatever your gap is in understanding of new tools or technologies, the time is now to be thinking about that, not once you're in the role and figuring it out. And I see some grimaces around the room of like either disagreement or I got a long way to go. I personally have a long way to go, but I feel like we got to use these tools. They're out there now.
You're right. I feel like my long way to go is just like with my bad attitude. But because it's just, there is a way, like that culture, that there is a version of technology being introduced to the economy that is like, hey, I have a new thing that could help. And then there's a way it actually happens, which is like a pirate kicking down the door and being like, you're worth less. This works like this. And I don't like the culture of it. And it gives me an attitude, and you can hear it in my voice, Robbie, that I don't want to do it. But at the same point, you're right. Like we had a client, when I was at Purpose, we had a client who was working on one of those missions that's like, making a more democratic internet, where you're always like, I get what you're saying, like 80%, I'm gonna try to help you out, but I don't know. I don't super know. But we had to say what was our vision for like technology that we would feel good about. And I just want something simple. Like if there was like a chief ethicist required at every tech, like I just, a brief story, because I truly have no idea what time it is. My father-in-law was a chemist and a mechanical engineer. And at one point he worked for Lazy Boy, they make recliners and stuff like that. And so he would take my husband to the factory floor, and you would see the recliner opening again and again. They would have it rigged to keep doing that. And part of it was for the product guarantee, to make sure that it could last as long as they said it was. But also part of it was to make sure that it didn't snap your ankle off when you tried to recline. And
I'm sorry.
You couldn't.
What?
Oh, yes, babe.
Did new fear unlocked?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You better hope the inspector ate his Wheaties, because anything can go wrong. Have a great night. But my point is that you could not just release something to the market and like in the spirit of like, we'll see what works. You had to take reasonable and thorough steps to make sure you weren't going to hurt someone. And the fact that that is not the standard in technology blows, like, is it a different version of the earth? It just, I don't like it. So I want to try to take that and put it in a productive place.
Oh yeah, that's the reason. You were articulating the reason for us to not lose the plot.
100%. Like, you can't just get mad and get turned off. You have to get mad and get involved. So I agree with you, I guess is what I'm saying. I just like have a bad attitude about it. Okay, let's wind down for real. 2-part outro. First, is there any singular message you want to give to the issue space community of social impact professionals, employed, seeking, leveling up, stagnant, whatever? And the second is there anything that you're working on with Cultivate or otherwise that you want this community to know about?
Yeah, well, thanks again for creating this space.
Absolutely.
Kat, tonight and also in general.
Yes.
In terms of the messages here, so on the first piece, what do I want to leave people with? One thing, just to hammer it home again, is none of us are alone. None of us is alone. You know what I mean, okay? That is fundamentally true all the time. It's especially true right now. You are in this together, especially when we feel most alone, okay? That's thing one. And part two of that is, I would argue, the skills that will serve us best right now collectively is some combo platter of curiosity and empathy. The curiosity, because we clearly do not have the answers, okay? We wouldn't be where we are if we all did. We need to continue striving for more, but that has to be paired with empathy, because when we're in these frenetic, chaotic times right now, it would be too easy for us to take out all of the uncertainty on each other. And that happens, we're human, I get it. I think the impulse we should try to instill, though, then, is this idea that we're all just doing our best right now. And if we really truly believe that, it's not to excuse behavior that shouldn't be excused, but it is to contextualize the moment that we're collectively in.
I completely agree.
Oh, yeah.
I completely agree. And my build to that would be, don't act like scary shit isn't scary. Like when people are popping off and they think they're flexing on LinkedIn about like, you shouldn't be afraid or whatever, I'm like, if you don't get why people are afraid, you are telling me you haven't gotten what we're talking about. Because these terms like vulnerable, targeted, marginalized, it's literal. It's about literal physical safety, and you need to do what you need to do to be safe and to be able to engage with this work safely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Curiosity, empathy. And then lastly, the call to action, the different platforms we talked about. All hands, if you're a job seeker, all-hands.us, primarily for US-based job seekers. It's free to join, would encourage you to come in. If you're an organization, if you're already in an org that's looking for support navigating these times, whether that's outplacement service, I hope not, it happens, or executive coaching work for leaders across the board, you can hit us up. That program is called Team Assembly.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you too. Always a pleasure, Kat.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope it resonated with you. Again, you can learn more about our community and what we're building at issuespacemedia.com. Thanks for being here and welcome to the space. Hello, Issue Space community. This is Kat Addo, the creator of the space, and I wanted to share that this episode of the Issue Space podcast was recorded live. It takes so many wonderful people and partners to pull together a live event that I just wanted to make sure that you had a chance to learn about a couple of them, including the organization Idealist. Idealist is a nonprofit whose mission is to help build a world where all people can lead free and dignified lives by inviting people everywhere to imagine, connect, and act. Hear a little bit more about Idealist from its founder and executive director, Ami Dar, and visit idealist.org to learn more. Ami Dar, the founder of Idealist, very kindly gifted this space to us tonight. So I wanted to not only thank him, but if you'd like, just invite you to say a few words about what you do.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and I hope this goes well. Yeah, so Idealist has been around for 30 years now, which I can't believe. We have staff that is younger than the site, which is sort of gets interesting. Yeah, it is a little bit crazy. It's been 95, so 30 years. We're best known in the US as a place to post social impact jobs. Around the world, it's more volunteering than jobs. And then have been working towards sort of a new initiative that will be launched probably Wednesday 28th, so 2 weeks from today. You're going to come to Idealist, and you'll see an entirely new thing that is not about jobs at all, although jobs are still going to be really important. As to how do we actually change this world of ours that I think needs some changing. And one mechanism we're going to use, I'm just going to tell you one quick thing, is that you know how in the US, if you write any date of the month, like 3/7, for example, it's March 7th, right? But in Europe, it's July 3rd. And the only days where that's not true are like 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, right? We're going to take that little gimmick and we're going to say basically that once a month from 1/1 through 12/12, we're going to call them Idealist days all over the world. And on that day, you're allowed, encouraged, pushed, whatever, to actually finally bring a cookie to your neighbor or launch a new campaign or propose something in the office or why don't we compost or the mayor can close streets so kids can play. One day a month that we can just celebrate and spark action and collaboration. Not a day of service. Let's actually do stuff every day. Once a month, let's celebrate it. Okay, so that's the idea. You're going to hear about that soon, and hopefully you will participate. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ami. Thank you so much. So it's idealist.org to learn more, and they're on social everywhere.
No worries.
So you can get involved.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Issue Space community. This is Kat Addo, the creator of the space, and you might have caught that this episode of the Issue Space podcast was recorded live. So many amazing people and partners helped make the evening what it was, and I wanted to tell you about one of them called Ethique Beauty. Ethique Beauty is a sustainable beauty brand that makes clean, ethical, and 100% plastic-free hair care products for a more beautiful future for people and planet. Their approach takes a smaller footprint and bigger impact that delivers your best beauty without compromise by having plastic-free, home-compostable packaging since day one, using EU standard clean ingredients, and having a responsibly sourced, traceable supply chain. Some of their impact looks like 41 million plastic bottles saved to date and counting, thanks to a partnership they have with the organization Clean Hub, over 700,000 trees planted, 2% of sales donated to charity, and 120% carbon offset while en route to net zero emissions. I know that as social impact pros, we spend so much of our professional selves thinking about how to support the planet, but at home, we're all just normal consumers too. And if you're looking to make a swap to a clean brand in your hair care, Ethique Beauty seems like a great option. Also, I know people in our space love to travel, love to see the world, love to get exposed to other cultures, and Ethique Beauty's hair care is all solid, which means you can just throw it in a bag and go, which is kind of ideal. Check out what Ethique Beauty offers at ethique.com, that's ETHIQUE.com, and see if it works for you.